My mother-in-law stood in my own dining room holding a glass of my wine and told 11 guests that the reason I didn't have children yet was that I was too busy playing engineer to be a real wife. Everyone laughed. My husband didn't correct her. And 3 days later, when the county called asking why the backflow valve I'd personally certified at her assisted living facility had failed a routine inspection, I discovered exactly whose signature had actually been on that report. To understand how we got to that phone call, you have to go back 2 years to a woman who never once asked what I actually did for a living, only what I could do for hers. My name's Renee Castellanos. I'm a municipal water systems engineer in Albuquerque. I test and certify the backflow prevention systems that keep contaminated water out of drinking supplies, hospitals, schools, senior care facilities. It's not glamorous work, but if I sign off on a system and I'm wrong, people get sick, sometimes worse. My mother-in-law, Odessa, owned a mid-sized assisted living facility on the west side of town. Sunset Terrace, 42 residents, most of them in their 80s. She ran it like a small kingdom, and my husband Marcus had grown up learning that questioning Odessa wasn't worth the fallout. I started helping Sunset Terrace about 18 months into our marriage, back when their contracted inspector retired mid-contract and Odessa needed someone fast before her license renewal deadline. I did it as a favor. Just once, I told myself. Once turned into every spring and every fall, for 2 years straight, at no charge, because, in Odessa's words, family doesn't send family an invoice. That sentence, I learn, only applied in one direction. I want to be honest with you. I know how it sounds now, looking back, that I let this go on as long as I did. The first real crack came about a year in. I found an actual invoice from an outside inspection company for the exact testing I had already done for free that same season. Odessa had used it to apply for a county safety grant, claiming the facility invested in independent third-party compliance. My work, someone else's invoice, her grant application. When I asked her about it, she waved a hand and said the grant paperwork was just formatting, and that, of course, everyone knew I was the one who really did the testing. I let it go. I shouldn't have. The second crack was smaller, but it stuck with me longer. At a facility open house last spring, a county health inspector asked who managed their backflow compliance program. Odessa answered before I could say a word. "Oh, we contract that out properly, of course." Standing 4 feet away, holding my own test equipment case, I said nothing. Marcus said nothing either. Then came the dinner. 11 of Marcus's relatives, my in-laws' anniversary, my own dining room. Odessa lifted her glass. My wine and mid-toast pivoted into a joke about how Marcus and I still hadn't given her grandchildren because I was too busy pretending to be an engineer to actually be a wife. The table laughed. My husband looked at his plate. I looked at Odessa and said, "I certify the water safety for 42 of your residents twice a year for free, Odessa. I think I can handle being an engineer and a wife at the same time." She smiled the way she always did when she'd already decided she'd won. "Nobody asked you to do that, dear. That's not your job." 3 words landed harder than anything else she said that night. Not your job. Because 2 days later, the Bernalillo County Environmental Health Office called my cell, not Sunset Terrace's front desk, my personal cell, asking why the backflow prevention report filed for their spring inspection listed my certification number. Dated for a test conducted on a day I could prove, with a calendar and a paper trail, I had spent 400 miles away at a conference in Denver. I hadn't performed that test. I hadn't signed that report. I opened the county's online compliance portal that night, entered my certification number, and started scrolling backward through every filing that had ever used my name. The first 6 reports were clean. The 7th wasn't. Then the 8th. Then the 9th. My certification number appeared on 9 separate filings over 14 months. 3 of those dates were days I had never even been at Sunset Terrace. One was a Sunday, another was during a week when I was in Denver, and one report claimed I had personally inspected a mechanical room that had been locked for repairs that entire month. I sat there at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and for the first time, I stopped thinking of this as a family problem. It was a professional problem. And professional problems have records. I downloaded everything, every inspection report, every invoice, every grant application I could find, every email connected to Sunset Terrace. I made a folder on my computer and named it something boring enough that nobody would think twice about it. Compliance. Then I called the county investigator back. "Before we go any further," I said, "I need to ask you one question." "Sure." "Who submitted the reports?" There was a pause. "The account belongs to Sunset Terrace." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. Then she said, "The submissions came through an administrative login." "Whose?" She hesitated. "Odessa Castellanos." I closed my eyes, not because I was surprised, because suddenly everything made sense. The fake invoice, the grant application, the way Odessa always insisted that my work was just a family favor. She hadn't misunderstood what I was doing. She had been using my professional credibility as part of the business, and then I found something that changed what I was going to do next. One of the reports had been edited after submission. My name was there, my certification number was there, but the digital signature wasn't mine. Someone had taken an older report containing my legitimate signature and copied it into a new filing. That was the moment I stopped thinking about confronting Odessa privately. I started thinking about consequences. For the next 3 weeks, I did almost nothing that anyone could see. I went to work. I came home. I answered Marcus when he asked how my day was. And every night, I built the file. I requested public records. I compared dates. I checked grant documents. I pulled maintenance invoices. I matched them against inspection reports. And what I found was bigger than I expected. Sunset Terrace had received $38,400 in grant money over 2 years, based partly on compliance documentation that included my name. My work had been represented as independent verification. It wasn't. Then I found a second issue. The facility had paid an outside contractor $700-800 for maintenance work that the records said I had inspected. I hadn't, and there was one more thing. A resident's family had filed a complaint about water discoloration 6 months earlier. The complaint had been marked resolved. The report said I had inspected the system and found no issue. I had never seen the complaint. I stared at that page for a long time. That was when the anger finally came. Not loud anger, the kind that makes you very still. Because 42 elderly people lived there. And suddenly this wasn't about Odessa humiliating me at dinner. It wasn't even about the money. She had put my name between a facility and the people who trusted it. I reported everything. The county opened an investigation. The grant agency froze the remaining funds. And because I was the one who had discovered the misuse, I gave them every document I had. Marcus found out 2 days later. He came home early, dropped his keys on the counter, and said, "Mom called me." I didn't answer. "Renee, what did you do?" I looked up from my laptop. I reported forged certification records. His face changed. "You reported my mother?" I reported what she did. She's gonna lose the facility. If the investigation finds violations, that's not because I reported them, it's because they happened. He stared at me. "You could have talked to me first." I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "I did." He frowned. "When?" "Every time she asked me to do something for Sunset Terrace, and you told me not to make it a big deal." He looked away. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. "I thought you were okay with it." That sentence hurt more than anything Odessa had said. Because maybe he really did. Maybe in his mind, my silence had always meant agreement. I closed the laptop. "Then you never really saw me." He left that night. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't chase him. And while my personal life was falling apart, my professional life was doing something I never expected. My department promoted me. Not because of the investigation, because during the county review, they discovered how much of my work had been used to identify compliance problems across multiple facilities. I was offered a position leading a new municipal water safety review team, better salary, more responsibility, and something I hadn't had in years, authority. I took it. 6 months passed, then a year. Sunset Terrace lost its grant eligibility. The county required an independent compliance program. Several reports were formally withdrawn. Odessa was ordered to repay $24,600. She also had to hire a licensed consultant and submit to regular inspections. Marcus and I divorced quietly. No screaming, no dramatic courtroom scene, just paperwork. And honestly, I thought that was the end. It wasn't, because 18 months after that dinner, I got an email from my department's legal office. The subject line was simple. Odessa was appealing the enforcement action, and she had requested that I attend. I almost said no. Then I saw who else was attending. The grant agency. The county. The licensing board. The outside contractor. And Odessa. Suddenly I understood. She wasn't asking for a meeting. She was hoping I would come in as the emotional daughter-in-law everyone remembered. The woman who had been embarrassed at dinner. The woman who might get nervous when the questions started. The woman who might say, "Maybe we can work something out." She had no idea who she was about to sit across from. The conference room was small. Gray table. 6 chairs. A pitcher of water in the middle. Odessa arrived in a cream-colored suit carrying a leather folder. She looked exactly like she always had, confident, prepared, almost offended that the room wasn't already agreeing with her. She looked at me and smiled. "Renee." I nodded. "Odessa." She sat down. For the first 10 minutes the lawyers talked, then her attorney turned toward me. We'd like to clarify one point. You were involved with Sunset Terrace for several years, correct? Yes. And you performed inspections? Yes. So it's possible some of the documentation reflects work you performed, even if you don't personally remember every filing? I looked at him. No. He blinked. No? I remembered every filing I performed. Odessa shifted in her chair. I opened my folder. I kept my original testing logs. I placed the first document on the table. Then another. Then another. Dates? Times? Equipment numbers? Locations? Everything. Her attorney looked through them. Odessa didn't. She was watching me. Finally she said, "Renee, this has gotten completely out of hand." I said nothing. She leaned forward. I never intended to hurt anyone. That was the first honest thing she'd said, and I believed her. That's what made the next part harder. She continued, "I was trying to keep the facility open. Do you understand what that means? 42 residents? 42 families, employees who depend on those paychecks. If I had told everyone we couldn't meet the deadline, the whole place could have collapsed." I looked at her. "I understand." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "But you still use my name." She looked down. "I trusted you." "No." I shook my head. "You trusted that I wouldn't check." The room went silent. She swallowed. Then came the moment she had probably been saving for. "I thought you were family." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly Odessa. Family had always been the word she used when she wanted something she hadn't earned. I opened my laptop. "I brought one more thing." She stared at me. On the screen was a spreadsheet. Every filing connected to my certification number. Next to each one was the date, the actual location of my work, and the person who submitted the document. There were 23 entries. Only 14 were legitimate. 9 weren't. Then I clicked to the next page. Grant payments, $38,400. I clicked again. Outside contractor payments, $7,800. Again, repayment demand, $24,600. And then I turned the laptop toward her. "These aren't accusations." I said it quietly. "They're numbers." Odessa stared at the screen. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have an answer ready. Her attorney whispered something to her. She shook her head. "No." Then she looked at me. "Renee, please." That word stopped me. Not because I wanted to forgive her. Because I'd never heard her say it before. She wasn't asking as my mother-in-law anymore. She was asking as the owner of a business that was slipping away from her. And I had one decision left. I could make this personal. Or I could keep it professional. So I said, "I don't want your business." She looked confused. "I don't want your house. I don't want your money. I don't want Marcus back. I don't want an apology you don't mean." I closed the laptop. "I just want my name removed from everything you used it on." Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded. The settlement was signed 3 weeks later. Odessa repaid what she owed. The licensing board placed conditions on the facility. The fake reports were formally withdrawn, and the independent consultant took over compliance. I never went back to Sunset Terrace, but I heard about it. The first time was 6 months later. I was leaving work when I saw a familiar name on a county inspection bulletin. Sunset Terrace, compliant. Independent certification, no violations. I stood there reading it twice, then I put my phone away and kept walking. That should have been enough. But a few weeks later, I saw Odessa in a grocery store. She was standing near the frozen food section, holding a small basket. No staff, no polished office, no people waiting for her approval. Just her. She noticed me. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she said, "You look good." I said, "I am." She nodded. "I hear your team is doing well." "They are." She looked at the floor. I was wrong. I waited. She didn't say anything else. And strangely, I didn't need her to. Then she whispered, "I really did think I was protecting everyone." I believe that too. But protecting people doesn't give you the right to put your mistakes in someone else's name. She walked away with her basket. I never saw her again. The second scene happened at work. A young engineer on my team came into my office holding a report. She looked nervous. I think I made a mistake. I looked at her. What kind? She handed me the paper. It was a small error. Fixable, no harm done. She was already apologizing. I smiled and said, "Then we fix it." She looked relieved. "And we put your name on the corrected report?" She nodded. I remember watching her leave, and I realized something. For years, I'd been afraid of having my name attached to mistakes. Now I understood why my name mattered. Not because it made me important, because it made me accountable. The last time I thought about Odessa was almost a year later. I was training a group of new inspectors at a water treatment facility. I showed them an old valve assembly and explained how one small failure could contaminate an entire system. One of them asked, "How do you know when a system is safe?" I picked up my inspection sheet. "You don't guess, I tap the signature line, you test it. Then I signed my name, and for some reason that tiny motion felt bigger than everything that had happened before. Because once someone had taken my signature and used it to hide the truth, now I was using the same signature to make sure the truth couldn't be hidden. I still keep that old folder on my computer, not because I'm angry. I keep it because every document inside taught me something about records, pressure, and people. Water systems are strange that way. You can have a beautiful building, fresh paint, clean floors, a welcoming front desk, and still, somewhere behind the wall, one bad connection can quietly poison everything. You don't see it right away. You only see it when somebody finally tests what everyone else assumed was fine. And maybe that's what happened to my marriage too. From the outside, everything looked normal. But underneath it, something had been broken for a long time. I didn't destroy their world. I just stopped putting my name on the cracks. So let me ask you something. If someone you loved kept calling your sacrifices family, while quietly using your name to protect their own mistakes, how long would you keep signing for them? Tell me what you would have done, and if you've ever been put in that position, I'd genuinely like to hear your story.